is the CEO of Council for Unity. I've been involved with Council for Unity for 50 years. Bob is an amazing guy. What Council for Unity does is they go into prisons, they go into schools, they go into communities, and they reform violent people, and they turn violent gang members into a band of brothers. It's just so amazing. And I've seen the good work he's done. I've seen the work he's done in prisons. I've seen the work he did in my community. Just a little bit of background. I was back in the 1970s, a very young man. And in my neighborhood, Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, there were riots breaking out, racial riots, because a federal judge ordered school busing. And they had African-American kids coming into white schools, and there was absolute chaos. Bob was one of the guys that stepped in and created a very peaceful situation. He did amazing work. So, Bob, say hello.
Hello, everybody.
Could you share the story behind Council for Unity? What inspired its creation, and how has its mission evolved over the years?
Well, Dave, they call Council for Unity the program of miracles, and it probably should have never happened. As you said, in the 70s, there was a court order basically to ensure that schools would be integrated. The problem was, up until that point, every community in New York City school system had their own, they had a school that reflected their demographics. And most of the communities were monocultural. Once they started to bus in minorities to integrate schools that had predominantly white populations, a big problem occurred because nothing was put in place to prepare schools for the assimilation that was about to come. So, as you mentioned, especially in Bensonhurst, there were riots, there was a lot of violence and assaults, and we were facing a full-blown crisis. Most of the strategies at the time didn't work. When I was a teacher at John Dewey High School, when this problem began to rear its ugly head in our school, I was recruited to basically see if there wasn't some way to get out of this pit. So I recruited 6 gang leaders who represented the different demographics that were in conflict. They were not happy when I brought them together. They were basically in a room with their enemies instead of their friends. So you can imagine the effort that took to create some kind of a commitment. But basically, I empowered them not only for their own safety, but for the safety of the school, and got them to agree to work with me for 1 year. And if it didn't work, then obviously we would have had to disband. A miracle happened. Within the course of a year, these contending leaders ended up becoming a band of brothers. The violence in the school stopped, and it also had a huge impact on the community. Now, what's the significance of this? For 200 years, America has been struggling with issues of racism and hatred of immigrants. The best we've come up with is to create laws that kind of mandate that somehow we learn to respect one another, respect our differences. It hasn't worked, as we know. Now, when this group, these 6 leaders, formed Council for Unity, they made a statement that this problem that's been affecting America for 200 years stops in this place and this time, not by some mandate or by some law, but by their agreement to end it. That was profound because it hadn't happened anywhere else in the country. So from that, the Council for Unity evolved and we began to recruit. Eventually, the Department of Education called us downtown, asked us to create a curriculum. So we went into many violent schools, 8 high schools in the beginning, turned them all around just like John Dewey, and then we spread to elementary and middle schools. Then eventually through the Boys and Girls Club of America, we spread all across the country. Then we began to also expand into other areas like correctional facilities, police departments, communities. Council for Unity became this holistic model that engaged schools, communities, law enforcement, and corrections. with a very vigorous plan that Counsel for Unity ex-offenders would find employment and be helped by the community so they wouldn't go back to prison. That was an amazing template. That's where we are now.
I know you worked in a correctional facility, and I want to focus on that for a second. You worked in the Suffolk County Correctional Facility, and that's just such an amazing story. They were on the verge of a riot. You had opposing gangs. You had the Bloods and the Crips ready to kill each other. You came in and you created not only peace, but you created harmony. You created a band. I'll say a band of brothers. You created unity between some very violent people in a prison that was about to explode. It was one step away from exploding. Tell me about that, please.
Well, we don't want to get into hyperbole, Dave, with too much drama here. The truth is that the gangs in the prison were engaged in violence. The sheriff basically said to me, I'm probably out of my mind for taking this program because I don't think it's going to work. He said, but if you're crazy enough to go down to the chapel and meet with because I'm going to send all the gang leaders to meet you. There's going to be one sergeant at the desk who was a female. And if they decide to come after you, there's not a thing we can do to stop that.
Let me interject just for a quick second. I saw the video. I saw that sergeant interviewed. She said there was about to be a riot. Those were her.
She was afraid that there was going to be a full-scale riot. And she didn't want to be there. Yeah. She didn't want to be there.
Go ahead, because...
But she did.
I think, honestly, there was an explosive situation, and these people were very violent, and they were hurting each other.
In order for your audience to really get a grasp of what I'm saying, because if I was sitting with AR, I wouldn't believe one word that either you or me said. So my suggestion is going to be for everyone who's listening and is genuinely interested, log on to www.counselforunity.org and click on the videos of men wearing green, and you will see exactly what I'm saying. It's probably a subject for an in-depth video of how I was able to make that happen, because people said, what did you say to these people? I had a pretty dark youth myself, and not that I want to get into details here, but I was in some really dark, violent situations myself. I was not unfamiliar with the life. When you are in that life, generally three things happen. One, if you want to inherit the family they're offering you, you got to commit a criminal act. The second reality is that they're going to rob you of your free will, which means you're going to have to do things you don't want to do, or else. The only outcome from that milieu is prison or the cemetery. Any byproducts of that affect your personality. One is depression. The second one is rage. And the third one is self-hate. None of those things were strangers to me. So when I describe my experience and how somebody saved me, got me out of that, I basically said to them, there's only one reason I'm here. I got a second chance. And I'm here to offer you the same thing. If you go on Riverhead Prison and Founders and Forefathers, the Founders and Forefathers is narrated by a first Crown of the Latin Kings, who was the shot caller for the Latin Kings in Suffolk County Correctional. He basically validates what we're sharing here. He said all the gang leaders came down. We met with Bobby. We fell in love with the program. And the rest is history. We transformed that facility. There are multiple videos that validate that. Our participants in Suffolk County Correctional made that video because we were going into Rikers Island. They wanted to show the mostly young people who were going to be joining our program that Counsel for Unity works, because it worked for them. They basically talked about 8 steps that they went through using our curriculum that changed their lives. The ultimate conclusion here, and it was stated in the gang conference video, which is also on the website, the Commissioner of Corrections, Brian Fisher, basically gave testimony to this, and that is that people can change. If you offer them a better path and it has value for them, they're going to take it. That pretty much has been our experience.
What you did is amazing. I'm going to play some of the videos on LinkedIn for my audience. I'm going to upload them. We already talked about that. You gave me permission to do it. So I'm going to share that with my people. Let me ask you this. The challenges of gangs in institutions, like, for example, the Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, I'm reading about it in the newspapers right now. That place is a jungle. What strategies would Council for Unity implement to mitigate gang influence, promote rehabilitation, and make a jail like the MDC a better place for both the inmates and the correction officers? And
Dave, it's not really up to us. It's really up to the facilities themselves. Number one, they have to provide funding. This is not a program that's free. Number two, they have to support what we're doing. When I started the program at John Dewey, the principal came to meet with all the Council for Unity members, and he said, this is the single most important program in Dewey because it's going to guarantee that we are free from violence and free from discrimination. The sheriff at Suffolk County Correctional at the time pretty much did the same thing. He said, I'm supporting this because I think it's good for you. If you're an inmate, and I don't want to use that word, if you're an incarcerated person, it's a fair question to say.
Excuse me, an adult in custody.
Or a young person who's incarcerated. What's in it for me? The bottom line in what I have shared is it's bad enough that you're in hell already. Having to live every day, waking up, not knowing who's going to stick a shiv in your back or who you're going to have to kill in order to survive that day, just compounds your hell. If you create a Council for Unity where we bring everybody together, there's nobody left to fight, and there's nobody left to make fun of. So the great byproduct of unity is that it absolutely stops violence. Again, I'm going to say it. You bring everybody together, there's nobody left to fight. What's in it for them is safety. Then once there's safety in a facility, the next step is that incarcerated people can start taking advantage of programs that are available to them. In a lot of our facilities, you can get training in all the trades. You can get an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree. I know that when Brian Fisher was the superintendent at the incarcerated men there were able to get a master's degree.
Wow.
Bottom line, Dave, I think, is that you have to introduce hope. If people don't have hope, they have nothing to lose. If they have nothing to lose, you better look out, because if they don't care if they live or die, they don't care if you live or die either. A lot of things would have to come together in order for us to do what you are suggesting. It would have to be a commitment on the part of the facility itself to support Council for Unity.
Well, of course, this is a program that's good for everyone. Let me just say that I'm very familiar with what you've done. I supported your organization, not only with money, but with individual mentorship. You know, as you know, I used to, go to your events. I used to mentor gang kids. I was involved hands-on, and I was involved financially. But for people that don't know what you've done, you mentioned Brian Fisher. He was the commissioner of corrections in New York State, which is one of the largest correctional.
And Council for Unity, as he will admit, was instrumental in making that happen. If your followers also go on the website and click our gang conference, which was probably the most compelling gang conference in the last 20 years, they are going to see former gang leaders sharing their experience in Council for Unity and their transformation. Commissioner Fisher said that Council for Unity is probably the best program I know of to help young people get out of gangs. He said Council for Unity proves one thing: people can change. Sheriff DeMarco followed him and said the same thing. He said, I go down, I visit the men, and through Council for Unity, they take their mask off. They rid themselves of the hard, cruel facade that they've been living behind and become human and become vulnerable. He said when they're able to do that and become authentic, a lot of them actually break down and cry, maybe for the first time since they've been children. This is what this program does. It restores you to your humanity. it gives you hope that if you learn how to make relationships work, if you become collaborative with other people that are in your situation, everything is going to change. You're going to change, and the institution you're in is going to change right along with it.
Bob, could you recount a particular instance where the council's intervention led to a significant positive change in an individual? Tell my audience the story of Stagger Lee. I think they'd want to hear that.
I think I can bring one even a lot closer. And that person was, I'm not going to say the illegal activity that he was involved in, but he and his partner were making about $16,000 a week. I'll let your followers use their imagination.
I'm sure they know, but okay.
There was a riot in Erasmus Hall High School. I was called in. It was basically a race riot. Ironically, it was between African Americans, Jamaicans, and Haitians. At the time, the Haitians were at the lower end of the social hierarchy in the school. A conflict broke out between a Haitian and a Jamaican, which led to a full-scale explosion in the school. I met with 85 of the participants who had leadership and were involved in that conflict. I spent 3 days with them. Then I offered them a choice of being able to stop this by joining Council of Unity. They all did. These two young entrepreneurs who were involved in what we all know they were involved in,
Okay,
came involved, and one of them works for me. He was asked, he and his partner, because I was paying them as consultants, and maybe this will be a telling underlining of what this program does. They were speaking at a conference of women, mothers, who lost their sons to gang violence. And as they were explaining their involvement in Council of Unity and how much money they were making, one of the mothers said, I don't understand this. You were making all that money and you gave it up? I got one guy a job in the United Federation of Teachers, and the other guy worked for me. And you gave all that money up for something that was a lot less? Why? I never really asked that question either. I was as curious as this mother was. They looked at each other, and they looked at this woman, and they said, because the Council for Unity made us want to live. That street corner that we were running comes with a death sentence. You're not going to keep it long, because if it's lucrative, others want it. Giving up all that money to have a respectable job helping people was worth more than all the money we were making. That was their answer. Council for Unity made us want to live.
I know the good work you've done, and I know one of the stories. I think my audience also would love to hear the story of Stagger Lee, because you told me that story, and I just think it's great. So...
It's kind of funny, too. I'm not going to give you his real name, but...
Don't, please.
No. Stagger Lee was one of the OGs, one of the original gangsters who founded the Crips in L.A., and that goes back quite a long time. So
powerful guy, right?
He was huge. He ended up in Suffolk County Correctional, and Sheriff DeMarco wanted him in Council for Unity. One of the officers who was in charge of security said he's never going to join Council for Unity. I was asked to come up to the facility on a Thursday night, and they brought Stagger Lee down, and he was in an office right off the chapel. They had 5 big correctional officers out there, anticipating that there might be some physicality between me and him. I walked in, he's sitting down, and I looked at him and I said, you must be really scared shit of me to have 5 cops out there to protect your ass. Well, he laughed for about 5 minutes and told me I was crazy. We began to talk. I shared my journey, which was pretty dark. Talked about how I crawled out of the street and into some even darker stuff down in Little Italy, and basically told him that I was restored to my humanity. And this guy that was in charge of security kept asking him, hey, Stag, you want to go back? He said, no, I'm good, man. I'm good. Half an hour was over. He looks at me and he goes, I've been waiting for something like this my whole life. I said, I can introduce you to our circle right now. all of my exec board members who had a similar past, but not as dramatic as Staggerly, were meeting in the law library. He had everybody in that facility scared to death. And I walk in with him, and a couple of the younger guys went, "Dag, you Staggerly." You know what he said? "Do me a favor. I just joined Council for Unity. Call me Daryl." Now, that's a transformation in a half an hour. He became a force, and eventually, when he got out, I hired him. If anybody wants to meet him, go on the website and click on Gang Conference, and you can hear Staggerly speak.
That's amazing. I just have one thing to say. You have done such good work, and I've seen it firsthand. And I've introduced your program to some pretty big people in the federal government. One of my brothers in Christ, Michael Francis, he was a former
The capo.
Yeah, and he became a born-again Christian, and he speaks very well. I attend his Bible studies, and he offers his services free of charge to help to talk to gangs, and there's silence. When I offered your service, there was silence. Why aren't people in government listening? Why isn't the Federal Bureau of Prisons, for example, listening and implementing your strategy?
I haven't got a clue. Maybe they don't want to empower people. Listen, Dave, a lot of prisons today are private, and it's in their interest to retain because it's money. It's money. Brian Fisher tried to close 3 correctional facilities in New York State, roundly defeated by elected officials because those facilities in those small towns upstate New York employed literally hundreds and hundreds of people. The prison is an economic base. You've got people who catered to the prisons and food, linen. To close that, in the mind of a lot of elected officials, create economic hardship.
I don't see it that way.
I don't either, but that's what it does. I don't know what the reason is. I know that for a period of time, we were funded in Rikers Island. We were funded in Brookwood Juvenile, upstate New York. We were volunteering our services in Sing Sing. And we were funded in Suffolk County Correctional. My guys from Sing Sing joined this rehabilitation through the arts, and they wrote a screenplay called Sing Sing. And 2 of my guys, Sean Dino Johnson and Divine G. Whitfield, Divine G wrote the script. That movie is up for 3 Academy Award nominations. Here are 2 guys who came through Council for Unity and rehabilitation through the arts, who are getting the message out that people behind bars are reachable, can change their lives, and can become assets to society if we put the proper steps in place to make that happen. Dave, I can't answer your question. Somebody else is going to have to answer it. I don't know why. I know what we can do, but for whatever reason, nobody's knocking on our door. And here's the scary thing. If all of them were watching now, they would say, that guy is out of his friggin' mind. I don't believe a word he said. However, thank God we've got the website, because they can hear out of the mouth of major gang leaders how the Council for Unity has changed their lives. It's there. And I barely speak. They're the ones that are doing the narration. If you really want to address this issue, invite your followers to knock on doors. Have them go on the website, witness what I'm sharing with you, and do something.
I will be sharing some of your videos. I've shared them already. I'm going to share them again. Let me ask you this. Hypothetically, if the Council for Unity was called upon to transform the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, and you're right there in Brooklyn, that's a facility that, as I said, is notorious for its gang-related issues and the challenging conditions. What steps would you take to initiate change? And what would you do to foster a safer and a more rehabilitative environment? What would you do?
What we've been doing, what we've done in the past. There's no magical bullet here. The facility has to basically say, we are bringing in a new program that can have major impact on your lives. Council for Unity is in a position where if you join it and you become part of a reentry program, they will help you. Number one, that is the first thing we would do really is show them those videos where they're looking at men in green who took the counsel journey and are basically speaking to them about how this program changed them. Because I walk in there cold, I know what I have to say, but I don't look like them, no matter what my background was like. When they witness, one of my guys did 40 years. When they witness people who've gone through this program and say it has literally transformed their lives, that's credibility. That would be the first step. And after that, we'd implement our amazing Dragon Slayer curriculum. By the way, that curriculum, which is a myth, where the dragon is a metaphor for all the things that block you. So to become a Council for Unity member, you have to face your dragon and you have to overcome it. What I used to tell the guys in my circle in Suffolk County Correctional, and as an impetus to change, I said, a correctional officer did not drive you to this facility. Your dragon did. If you don't face that dragon, he's going to keep driving you back. You have to make a decision. Either the dragon is going to drive your bus or you are. If you decide that you are, then take the council journey, because we will empower you to make that possible. That's basically the groundwork for what we would do.
Let me ask you this. What drives you personally in this work?
Oh, God. Reclamation. I know you're born again. I was born again through world mythology, which is more of a spiritual rather than a parochial journey. But a guy in my darker days saved me. He ended up committing suicide, which killed me. He was the toughest guy I ever met. I adored him. And I'll share one really dark experience that I had with him that may even relate to what happened to you when you found God. He and I both shared a sensitivity that we had to hide, because when you're in that life and you show sensitivity, you're dead. The only way to compensate for that sensitivity is to be twice as violent and twice as hardcore. Nobody sees through those cracks in your psyche. He confided in me, and I certainly confided in him. He's about 10 years older than me. I'll just share this one episode because it was probably the darkest moment in my life. And I think a lot of the guys I speak to could relate to it. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. In this joint we hung out with, and we're both drinking heavily. He says to me, I want to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me the truth. Do you believe in Christ? I said, what? He said, I'm going to ask you again. Do you believe in Christ? I said, I guess so. Why? And listen to what he told me. He ain't never coming down here. He ain't never going to show up. We're the damned and we are the abandoned. And somebody's got to get the hell out of here. And I think it's you. I said to him, you're out of your mind. Because at that time, I had no confidence in myself. And I was on a very bad track. But when he died, when he killed himself, and I got his name. His street name was the Basil, after Carmen Basilio. And I have pretty good hands.
So former mob guy or?
No, he was a middleweight and a welterweight champion.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't a mob guy at all.
Oh.
And when he died, I got his name. I was the Basil. That changed my life. I wasn't listening to him so much when he was alive, but after he died, it really scarred me very badly. The only way I could respect him was to do what he wanted me to do. That was get an education and come back. Whether it's a correctional facility or a school that is experiencing major conflict, I'm going back to the life I left, and I'm coming back with a story that I found reclamation and that it's possible. That's basically it.
Well, Bob, you've done such amazing work. I saw firsthand back in the 70s, we're in a high school that had, I'll say, I was white, but, white people, I wasn't like that, but there were white people that just hated the African-American community, and you made them not only tolerate each other, because it was more than that, you made them friends, you made them brothers. in an environment back in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, back in the 70s, that was unheard of. You really work miracles. And I'm just amazed.
Dave, I think there's a script for all of us, and we follow it. I'm not going to say that a lot of those guys hated blacks. Their basic thing was, look, you stay where you are, because they were in school. There wasn't a lot of violence in the school at all.
Not in our school, no.
No. Was the antipathy there? Sure. Yeah. But the basic message was, look, you stay where you are, we'll stay where we are, and in that lies the peace. The problem is that when groups are not interconnected, number one, they form very negative perceptions of one another because they don't get any other perception other than what they see in the media or what they see in the movies, where Italians are stereotyped as gangsters. African Americans are horribly stereotyped as drug dealers and are promiscuous and all that stuff. Latinos, the same thing. We live in a culture where all of our ethnicities and races are terribly stereotyped. In order to change that, you bring people together. So when everybody was in Council for Unity, they were learning the positive things about each other's culture. Out of that came a sense of a common humanity, which is basically the answer to this planet. Read the news. We still haven't been able to get to that point of realizing that unity saves this planet, it stops violence, and it stops discrimination. And we've got leaders out there who are insane in terms of fomenting violence, fomenting war, demonizing other cultures. And that's why I am witness to the opposite of that, because I'm in Council for Unity. I see every day what the world needs to become. That's what keeps me going. Council for Unity is what the world needs to. We have over 130 cultures in our network, and they're united as a single family. The tragedy is that we're basically relatively limited geographically. We should be all over the country. And at one point, we were in the Republic of Moldova, and we were in Nigeria as well, because we had people from those areas who were visiting here. In fact, if you remember, you actually funded Council for Unity in Moldova.
Yes, I do. That was in the early 2000s.
To come to America to participate in our induction.
Well, that's what my company did. And if I could just tell my audience, this is a very shameless self-promotion from my son. But anyone that does a solar energy project or buys a BESS system, that's a battery energy storage system, through my son's company, he's going to donate 3% of the profits to Council for Unity, another 3% of the profits to my church. Shameless self-promotion. I'll get past that because that's not the purpose of my podcast. I want to tell people about Council. But one of the things I want to point out, I attend all of Michael Francese's events, and I find him very dynamic and very powerful.
He's a good guy.
He makes the point. This is a sticking point with me. The government is not listening, and I'm praying because we have a new leader. We have Donald Trump, and he's very disruptive, hopefully disruptive in a good way. And he has the balls to do things, hopefully, that will propagate change, because I don't understand. You're right there in Brooklyn, okay? And one of the most violent prisons, one of the most gang-infested prisons is the MDC in Brooklyn, and they don't do anything to stop it. Jeffrey Epstein, I believe he was murdered. Supposedly it was a suicide. Yeah, right. I don't believe that, but that's another subject. There's so much violence going on at that place.
There's so much violence going on everywhere. Unfortunately, we are a very angry people at this point in our history. If Donald Trump seriously wants to bring change to the country, he's got to be a unifier instead of a divider. I don't care how many changes he makes. If half the country hates him and all of his supporters hate that other half, there's an old expression: a house divided against itself cannot stand. The leadership in this country has got to find common cause and common ground, tone down the rhetoric, start working on things that support a common good. If he does that, he'll go down as a great president. You take a quarter out and you turn it over, and it says in Latin, which supposedly signifies what the country's supposed to be. It's redeeming. It says e pluribus unum, out of many, one. That's what's supposed to be happening. Right now, that's not happening. The Council for Unity is probably the closest I've ever been to America on paper, because we reflect e pluribus unum. We have Republicans and we have Democrats, and we have conservatives and we have liberals in Council for Unity. The difference between us and the government is that even though our members have differing ideas on how to solve problems, they agree on one thing. We have to stay in the family and we have to work towards a common good. We are really the barometer, unfortunately, but it's not going to happen, for others to look at, because if they follow us, they're going to get a different country and a different world, because it's going to be one based on tolerance and common cause. The common good is everything. You have to support legislation, programs that promote the common good. You promote the common good, you get everybody involved.
That's what you guys are doing. That's what you guys are doing, Bob.
Well, unfortunately, it's on a very small stage, but it's significant. It's powerful. But maybe podcasts like this can lead to people demanding that Council for Unity come to their schools or to a correctional facility, because with that comes change.
And that's what we need. Bob, I thank you for joining me today. I thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to address my audience. Before we leave, looking ahead, what are your aspirations for the Council for Unity? Are there any new initiatives or areas of focus that you plan to explore to further the organization's impact?
Obviously, Dave, you used the word shark a lot. If a shark doesn't move, it dies. We are very aggressive in marketing the program, in board recruitment. IBM just made a major commitment of key personnel to volunteer to strengthen our operation. We are expanding. We've gone into some new schools. I'm pretty happy. The council is a dynamic that will always keep going forward.
I want to thank you for joining me. We'll be back again. I'll bring Bob back. Bob, thank you so much for joining.
It was a pleasure, Dave. I enjoyed it myself. And salute to all of your followers. I hope you found this meaningful.
Everyone, my LinkedIn family, thank you for joining me. God bless you. Have a great day. God be with you all.